Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. I think we might get started, seeing as it's clocked over to 10 o'clock. So I will start by just a few housekeeping things. Just going to run through them before we get too far into things. First and foremost, I guess my name is Caitlin. I'm one of the Access Project Officers here at the university. We are also going to be joined by Hugo today, who's one of our current medicine students. Now, Hugo is coming straight from a class that finishes right on 10 o'clock. So he's going to join us as soon as that's done. So he might sort of pop in a few minutes, hopefully. But we'll get to hear from him as well. We're going to be here for about 15, maybe 20 minutes today. We'll try and keep it to that sort of time. We'll see how we go. If you can keep your cameras and your microphones off. So I think someone has got their mic on. I can just hear that background noise at the moment. If you could have a look at that and make sure that's off. That just helps us with any of that background noise. It can be quite hard to hear. Above that can be a bit of a distraction. You can make sure you keep those off. And your cameras as well. Fantastic. Just going to see if we can mute a couple of you here. Yep, perfect. Okay. So, like I said, if you can keep those off, that will allow us to keep going without too much disruption. We are really keen to hear from you, though. So we have got the chat function available if you've got questions. If you can make sure you're typing them to everyone so that everyone can see that question, that would be great. Often people have the same question and want to hear the answer. We are also really fortunate today. We've got Lavina from our admissions team who's going to be sort of watching the chat and responding to those questions. Either right now, if we can, we'll try and answer anything that you come up with, or we can sort of point you in the right direction to maybe get that information somewhere else. But so if you see Lavina on the chat there, she's one of our team and she'll be manning that today. The information that we've got is really intended for domestic applicants. So the thing we're going to talk about with courses and the content, that is fine and absolutely applicable to everyone. It's just when we get towards the end, when we're talking about the application processes, that's really for domestic applicants. Again, don't let that put you off. Certainly stick around and stick with us. We can definitely provide you with those links and those information points to get that information that's relevant for you. If you can't hear at any point, there's a couple of troubleshoots you can do. So there's one up on the screen there. Apart from that, there's a whole lot of IT stuff we can fix right now, but we will be recording this session today. So we can certainly, we'll send that link out to everyone that registered after the session today. So if something goes terribly wrong, don't panic, you'll still get a copy of the recording. I'm just going to see if I can mute. I've still got some background noise coming through. There we go. I think we've got it now. So we'll get started. That'll do us now. Sorry, everyone. There we go. All right, let's get into things. So what are we going to talk about today? We are really going to talk about why you might want to study medicine here at Flinders. We're going to talk about some of the pathways to medicine. And we're also going to talk about some highlights. We're going to hear, like I said, from Hugo, who will be here shortly. And we're also going to talk about some of the entry requirements and how you actually go through that application process. So we're going to touch on all of those things today in a little bit of detail, but I guess more than anything, provide you some tips and tricks on where to find further information, because you probably will need more information than what we can provide in a 20-minute window today, but we'll certainly do our best to cover some of the basics and to start, that journey for you as well. All right. Sorry, if Melissa could possibly mute for me. I can't seem to mute from my end, but we're just getting that background noise a little bit. That would be fantastic. Let's see. Perfect. All right, let's see how we go. So why study medicine at Flinders? Well, I guess first and foremost, hopefully it's something you're really passionate about and interested in and wanting to pursue. I guess it's an industry that is sort of really growing and always going to be important for us. For us here at Flinders in particular, we have a couple of points we're really proud of. So the one down the bottom there, #1 in SA for teaching quality. So a really fantastic thing, which means that our medicine students are getting a great experience and that some of our teaching staff are doing a fantastic job in what they're doing and delivering, and that students are having a good time and a good experience when they come here. I guess the other ones up there, #1 in Australia and #1 in SA for full-time employment in medicine. So essentially saying that our graduates, once they've finished and once they've done all that hard work and that study, that they're heading out into the field and getting that full-time work, which is really fantastic. And I guess a big part of any study at university, a lot of people are really looking to take that study into their career, and often you want to get started straight away and get working and get out there. And so that is something that a lot of our graduates are doing and being really successful at. So that's really fantastic. So a couple of reasons why you might come and study with us here at Flinders. The pathways to medicine. So this is where I guess there's a little bit of extra information on top of what might be for one of our, one of our other courses. So that's what we're going to cover a little bit today. But essentially, there are sort of two main pathways to medicine. So there is either the high school entry, so meaning you've been to high school, you haven't done any further study, you're maybe in Year 12 at the moment and thinking about this for next year, which we call Year 12 entry, which means you would be looking at your Year 12 results, your UCAT, and then going into the 2-year clinical sciences, and then into the 4-year Doctor of Medicine program. So that, I guess, is the sort of straight from Year 12 option. The other option, or the main option, I suppose, is if you've already done a degree, so you've been to university, you've finished a degree in anything, in something in particular, we'll go into some of those options in a minute, then you want to progress into the next stage, so you would be looking at completing the GAMSAT. This is where you get an interview, so there's no interview requirement for the Year 12 entry, but there is if you're looking at that graduate entry. And then we also look at something called a weighted GPA. So look at your results from that first graduate degree for what that's going to look like for you. You can see up there as well, we do have an Indigenous entry scheme that will apply to some people, and again, something we can talk to a bit more on an individual basis, but very similar to the graduate entry requirements as well. But so that's, I guess, there's those two main streams. I'm going to talk about both of them in a little bit more detail in the next couple of slides, but they're the two things to keep in mind, that we have a group of students that come straight from Year 12, and then we also have that graduate entry option. So both are very competitive to get into, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, and both of those lead to that 4-year Doctor of Medicine option. So Year 12 entry, so if you're sitting in Year 12 at the moment, this would be the one that you're possibly looking at in the first case. And I think we've got Hugo coming in right now. Hello.
Hi.
Come on in. Thank you. I was just explaining to everyone that you have come fresh from a class, so real student experience. But yeah, so we're just getting into talking about the entry pathways.
Fantastic.
So Hugo's here to give his perspective, and we'll also hear directly from you about your experience and why you chose medicine and a few of those things, but we'll keep trucking along. So yeah, Year 12 entry, we're looking at your Year 12 results plus the UCAT is what is going to be considered. There are a couple of notes here. So like we said just a second ago, there's no interview requirement for Year 12 entry. So that's something that a lot of people are unsure of, because, you know, we hear about the interview requirement. There's no prerequisite. So again, something that maybe people are a little bit confused about at times, but it does say there is some, you know, subjects up there that could be useful preparation, but they're not required. And I guess there are some different application sort of points to this one as there would be to some of the other courses. So it is just on your ATAR and your UCAT. Some of those other alternative entry pathways that we use aren't considered for the Doctor of Medicine, mainly because it is so competitive. We do also have some special sub-quotas, again, something we can talk to a little bit more about in more detail. And I guess the note down the bottom there, that there's around about 26 medical placements for this entry. So last year, I know in 2020, we had about 1,600 or over 1,600 applicants. And I guess we don't share that to scare anyone off or, you know, to put you off or anything like that, but we do just like to let people know that it is super competitive. You can see from those numbers, it's a really small percentage that are able to get through this pathway. And so even if you do fantastically well in Year 12 and you don't get in, that doesn't mean you haven't done well. It means you've done a fantastic, amazing job and probably worked really, really hard, but just that it is quite hard to still even get in, so right at the top level. as well. So something to keep in mind,
Absolutely.
you know, not beat yourself up about, I guess.
Yes.
So we do like to let people know so that you're aware that there is that competitiveness in this one. And I guess that there are other options as well. And again, something you can look at in terms of what are those backup, you know, options, what might be some alternatives, or you might be looking at the graduate entry. If you didn't make it in this round, you could look at the graduate entry, which I think was your pathway,
Yes.
wasn't it, Hugo?
Yeah, that was mine.
Yeah.
So I didn't get in through this one.
Yeah, perfect. We'll hear about that in a minute. But speaking of the graduate entry, let's go straight into that. So the absolute best source of information for people that are looking at this pathway, there is the Domestic Application Guide. It's just been updated for 2021 and it is available. That has every bit of information you could possibly need in there pretty much. It's a fantastic resource, so we would say definitely have a look at that. For the graduate entry, there's a few more places. So we're looking at this round about 90. So your odds go up a little bit in that sense. And there are a couple of ways that you can sort of up your odds, I guess, with that one too. So you can see the little pie chart on the screen there. We have some sort of sub-quotas and some reserved places. So we're looking at those 4 bachelor degrees that are on the screen there. There is a certain amount of places reserved for graduates of those degrees. And I know too that there's sort of the thinking behind that is that those degrees tend to really set people up pretty strongly for the...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those the first 2 years of, I'd say, nearly all of those degrees are pretty much the same as what you would have if you're going from the Year 12 entry to medicine. You do very similar topics, so it sets you up really well.
Yeah. So that's sort of why they're given a bit of a priority, I guess. There is also chances though, so if you're sitting there today and you've already done your degree and it wasn't one of those, that absolutely doesn't mean you're out of the running. There's certainly, you can see that other quota where there's another sort of portion dedicated to any Flinders University degree, so whether you've come from somewhere completely different and have chosen medicine at a bit of a later stage or done something slightly different and then are coming from there, you can look at that sort of quota. And then we also do have a portion sort of for any degree, so from any university across Australia. And I guess the thing to consider is if you have completed one of those 4 degrees on the side there, you almost give yourself 3 shots. So,
yes.
Yep, you sort of get 3 turns because you'll be considered in that first batch, that first little section of the pie with the arrow in it. You'll get a consideration there. If you don't make it in that lot, you're sort of still considered in that 75%. If you don't make it in that lot, you're still considered in that extra orange section as well. So you sort of have 3 bites of the cherry, so to speak, that you can look at. So there are a couple of chances, I suppose, and I think as well, definitely looking at that guide to see, making sure you're ticking everything off, making sure you've done everything you can to give yourself the best position. There is also a range of ways you can get in contact with the admissions team here to talk about yourself and your circumstances and make sure you're ticking those things off. I will definitely provide that info before we go, so don't worry. It's pretty easy to find on the website as well, but certainly we'll make sure you've got any of those contact details in case you do want to have a bit more of a chat with someone here too. All right, so that's sort of covered how to get in. If we want to start looking at the actual course and some of the highlights and some of the exciting things, I guess really looking at some project-based learning, really looking at clinical skill development. So we can start talking about that, Hugo, a little bit. Really interacting with patients pretty early on, looking at research. You know, there are some opportunities for electives, and I guess generally there would be things about international rotations and learning across the world. That's obviously a little bit more problematic at the moment, but I'm sure we'll be back there at some point. And really a supportive sort of learning environment too. Yeah. So that, I guess, is some of the highlights. You can certainly find all of this information again on the website. So if you want to know exactly what you're going to be studying, it's really sort of fairly easy to find that information and have a really detailed look at what's happening in each of the degrees, and even across every single year, you can really drill in and see what it's going to be like. In terms of what you will study, so some first year medicine topics, obviously we can't go too far into all of this. We'd probably be here all day, and I'm sure people have other things to do today, but really looking at a broad range of things. So you can see there sort of the evolution of biological, the basis of life, but also some legal and ethical aspects of care, you know, contemporary issues and how your body works, communication. So a really big range that's going to help set you up to become a fantastic practitioner as well, depending on sort of what stream you're in. But some really exciting stuff, I guess, that you can study.
Yeah, absolutely. These are really good parts of the undergraduate program. So either if you come from Year 12 or you're doing one of those other degrees, these really set you up nicely for when you go into your graduate years.
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, looking at once you've sort of finished that first part of your study and then moving into the 4-year sort of Doctor of Medicine study, you're really going to be looking at transitioning from that learning sort of, I guess, about doctors and patients and the knowledge and really having that theoretical knowledge. And as you move through the years, you can see there your clinical training sort of goes up and up. And sort of increases as you go. I guess the other thing that's sort of really fantastic for us here at Flinders is that a lot of your learning does take place over on the medical centre side of things. So we're right across, we couldn't be much closer. You can get across there, we've got a little tunnel underneath the road, so it's really quick and easy to get across there, and lots of your learning takes place over there, doesn't it?
Yeah. Even in your younger years in the undergrad program, you'll spend half to 3/4 of your time down there. You've got your own medical library area, which you share with some other medical-based degrees.
Yeah.
So it's really well integrated into the hospital environment.
Yeah, that's right. Which sets you up because it obviously, hopefully, eventually you're going to end up working in the hospital or in certainly a similar environment. So a really great sort of transition that you get to do between sort of study and working and upping that more and more as you go as well, which is really great. So to hear about that in a little bit more detail, let's go straight to yourself, Hugo. Do you want to start with maybe telling us why you chose medicine or how you ended up choosing medicine?
So my decision to choose medicine was late in my school years. So it was in Year 12 when I considered it. I'm one of 6 children. I've got 5 younger sisters, and my youngest sister was born prematurely. So I went to a paediatrician appointment with my mum and to get my little sister checked out and make sure she was developing okay. And I was just really fascinated with what the doctor was doing and the exams he was performing. Like he'd tilt her back to see that her arms are flexing, so neurological and all that. So it was really fascinating for me. But I'm going on a tangent. But what was great most of all was just to see how relieved my mum was afterwards. Like she was quite concerned about my little sister going in there, that she was developing okay, and seeing that relief, it made me feel really good just being part of that, and I felt like this would be something that I'd want to do and to help people like that in future, whilst also learning about the body, which is incredibly fascinating. So that's where I went down that path, and that's how I decided I wanted to do medicine.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I guess as well, what was your story about getting in? So we've heard that it can be quite tricky and competitive, and you've obviously gone through the graduate entry route. So are you happy to tell us how that happened for you?
So coming out of Year 12, I did try and get through the clinical science route and going straight through. So I did have a year off in between, but I sat the UMAT. You've now got the UCAT. I put my name in for it. There's only 26 spots, so you've got to be in it to win it. You might win the lottery. I didn't. That's okay, because I went in and I did medical science instead. So that's one of the options we listed up there above. I did pretty much the exact same topics as all the clinical science students for the first 2 years, and when they moved on in 3rd year for entering the graduate program, I had a 3rd year of specialisation in the medical field, just more in research, studying the body. And then after that, well, during that time, I sat the GAMSAT a couple of times, got a decent enough score, luckily, then went through the interview process, and then I got into medicine. So that's sort of the pathway I did. So you're really not losing that much more time by not getting into clinical science. It's only 1 more year of study, and there's a couple more hoops to jump. But if you do the UCAT, I'm sure you can do the GAMSAT. So
yeah, absolutely. And so what about since you've started and have done a bit more study, what might be like a highlight or your favourite thing about the course or your study so far?
What's really been good for me, we've had a little less of it now because of COVID, but at the very beginning we were writing with patient interactions. So once we were tested to make sure we were ward safe and weren't going to do anything silly, we would go on the wards with our tutors. We would start interviewing patients, building up those skills, learning a bit about how to interact, and it was great to be immersed right from the start. Okay, you're going to be a doctor. You need to learn these now. Like they weren't just trying to teach you the physiology and all the science behind it. They were training you right from the get-go. So that was a really great thing for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about some advice? So people, whether maybe they're a school student watching today or maybe someone that's already done an undergraduate degree or have done a whole nother career and might be thinking about this at a later stage, advice to someone watching that's thinking about applying for medicine?
Biggest thing for me would be like that you need to have the passion for it. You need to want to do this. There's a lot of work involved, and when I speak to a lot of people about this, I tell them it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. I mean, you've got 2 to 3 years of undergrad, you've got 4 years of your graduate program, you've then got training afterwards once you're an intern, an RM, like it goes on. You're forever learning. So if you want to do this, you need to have the passion and the drive for it, because it is going to take up a large part of your life. And at some points, you're going to be thinking, I could just go be a plumber. I could be a carpenter. I'd have my weekends. But if you've got that passion for it, it's very rewarding. So that's the biggest thing I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Perfect advice, I think. All right, so we're going to keep going, and I'm a little bit conscious of the time, so we'll keep going and talk about some of the application nitty-gritty. But certainly, Hugo, jump in if you've got any tips and tricks as we go through. And thank you so much for sharing that as well. I think it's really great to hear from current students about how they got in and what happened. So, okay, if we are really looking at this as being an option for you, and kind of wanting to know, again, some more of that detailed information about what that means, what that looks like, what do you need to sort of be aiming for, I suppose. I guess with that clinical science doctor of medicine, there isn't an ATAR sort of published. I guess it's really because there's a number of factors, and obviously there's a bit of a different system with that. But if you're looking at popping in one of these of the other 4 degrees, so maybe as a backup, like you said, you do have to be in it to win it.
Yeah.
We certainly wouldn't ever discourage anyone from popping that as their first preference and giving it a shot. But certainly you might be looking at some of these other options as well as some of those backups. And, as something you've had a really good experience with too. So you're looking at a bit of a varied ATAR, but starting at sort of 70 for sort of health sciences or the science biotech as well, going up to sort of 85 for the medical science, maybe 96 sort of around there for paramedic science. So somewhere in that range. Again, these sort of can vary a little bit over the years and can change and those kind of things, but that gives you a good sort of ballpark figure to look at. If you want to find out more information about any of these, that link down the bottom there will get you to our website, and you can see what each of those courses is, what the differences are, which one, if you're trying to decide which one you might want to put first, because we do talk about it's really important you kind of make sure you order your preferences well, and again, something we can support with if needed, but that is something to think about, and this is kind of the ballpark you want to be looking at for some of those courses too. So good to have something to aim towards and kind of know where you're looking for. I guess something we are sort of mindful of at the moment and kind of reminding people in a lot of our webinars is about the online learning that's happening at the moment. So this is changing really rapidly. Maybe Hugo, you can probably jump in here. How are things looking? Because we have been fully online since March, but I do believe some of that's starting to come back.
So it is starting to trickle back. I'm just about to finish up for my first semester, so I'll survive that, which I've been happy with. Next semester, we'll be coming back to some more face-to-face, but still, because we've got such a large cohort, a lot of it's still online. So most of your lectures are online at this stage, and they've always been recorded there, but now they're live, and it's been an interesting process, but it's been good in some regards that, you don't have to go out of your house quite often, but you still have that interaction with your lecturers, and they're still very engaged, and they've made a tremendous effort to get themselves trained up so they can interact.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's been a good experience.
Yeah. And students are definitely being kept in the loop about those changes and everything that's moving and shaping as we go. That's certainly, very much informed, and all of our general support services across the uni are either accessible still online or on campus. Some of them are starting to come back, but if you are looking at starting uni sometime soon and maybe a bit concerned about sort of being a bit isolated, I guess reassuring people that we're still all here, the lecturers are all there, there is still that really great support system that we're quite well known for at Flinders too. It's a common sort of thing we hear from students, that they feel like that support's really great too. So it's still there, it just looks a bit different sometimes.
And I'll just quickly point out that the only real difference between uni and school with that regard of support is that you just need to ask for it. It's always there, it's always around. It's just someone's not going to look over your shoulder and check in as much. It's more you need to just go, hey, can I clarify this or that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I love talking about that with prospective students because I think that is a bit of a uni myth out there that you're all alone and nobody's going to care about you and, you know, nobody's ever going to follow you up. And I think, yeah, you're right. It is, people are still there, the supports are still there, and people do care. It's just you have to be a bit more proactive and a bit more of an independent learner in seeking that support. But yes, great point. Thank you. Definitely an important one. So, okay, how to apply? I guess you are going to be looking at the SATAC website. So every single university degree gets applied through here. So you're going to want to visit that and start sort of setting up that process, looking at, like we said, your preferences. We will point out here as well, there is a bit of a different application process if you're looking at that other option. So there is that information booklet available. That's fairly easy to find on the website, or again, you can let us know. We can sort of point you in the right direction to find that. But that is the application process that you want to go through. That is, I guess, for a lot of our courses, we're looking at mid-year entry. For the Doctor of Medicine, that one's not available for mid-year entry, but it might be some of those other, like we said, I think the Health Sciences is available for mid-year, so you could get started essentially straight away. The date that we've got up there, the 1st of June, has actually been extended. So if you are looking at mid-year, you're actually looking at the 29th of June now, which is fantastic, and you could be starting as soon as July. So you can see there that semester 2 starts on the 27th of July. There is a little bit of a cost involved in putting in that application in, and those dates for 2021 entry are a little bit different. They'll be coming out a bit later this year. But if you are looking at possibly one of those mid-year options, this is the sort of timeline you want to be thinking about and working towards that 29th of June application deadline too. As I said, that is a whole lot of information to sort of throw at you in a pretty short time frame. And unfortunately, we can't cover as much as we'd like. We could probably sit here for, I don't know, 3 days or so if we really wanted to cover everything in lots of detail. But certainly, hopefully, that gives you the starting point possibly. And if you're interested in talking to someone, there's a whole range of ways to get in touch with our amazing admissions team. So you can phone, you can also book a phone appointment, and they have just come back, I think, as being face-to-face as well. So if you want a longer time to talk to a student advisor, maybe you've got some personal circumstances and you want to work out what's your best pathway, you can certainly book that phone appointment. You can online chat, so we've pretty recently got a new chat function on our website, so if that suits you, you can do that. You can also email, so if that suits you, if you know, those top 3 options are sort of our business hours availability. So if that doesn't suit and you need to do it after hours, you can send an email with a bunch of questions, or if you've got a bit of a complex one that you want to get some advice on, you could pop that in an email and the team will look at that as well. So a range of ways to get in touch with us. We're really happy to help with anything we can as well, provide that information. The other thing to keep in mind is we do have some feedback for the actual webinar today. So we're really keen to hear if it's been helpful, if there's any additional information you would have liked to have got. If you've got any feedback, we're keen to hear it. So follow that link there. But I think that's about it from us today. What I will do is I will shut off the camera and the microphone in just a moment, and then what we'll do is we'll keep the chat open for a little while if you've got any questions coming in, so we can address any of those while we're here, and then also certainly get in touch with us, like I said, find out more information. Do your research, I think, with this one. Make sure you've got all the information you can ready to go so you know what's happening. But if that's it for you, thank you so much for joining us today, and hopefully we might see you on campus one day soon. Thank you.